Welcome back to the Football Fitness Federation podcast. I'm delighted to be joined today on the podcast by Kasper Thornton. Kasper, how are we doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. It's great to have you on. We've been trying to line this one up for a little bit, so I really appreciate you freeing the time up and coming on. And we've got some topics we're going to cover about the organisation, the work that you're doing, and we've probably not spoke about anything too similar in recent episodes, so it'll be quite a different episode for people as well. So I'm keen to get into that into a second. But just kick us off. We always start in the same place, which is you, your background. Can you give us a little bit of insight into what you've done up to current day?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a physiotherapist by train, and I have the most classical physio story out there. So as as athlete or a handball player, at least myself, got injured, broke my ankle, dislocated my ankle, had terrible rehab, never really made it back to cutting sports, and had the feeling that that should not happen to young athletes. So studied physio to be able to get into sports and help people come back from injuries. Found out through school that in Denmark, the market of pro sports physios is close to non-existent. So there's something like 15,000 educated physios and probably 50 working full time in sports. So pretty demotivated coming out of school, but luckily found my way through like many others, a bit of luck and then a lot of volunteering work and so on into our Danish club FCN. Spent time at the youngest kids academy for some years. Grew through the ranks at the academy. Ended up heading up the medical department for the academy, and grew into a role with the first team. Ended up as head of medical for the first team and also the whole club medical program. And from there, lucky enough to be promoted into the director of performance, so overseeing the whole performance department for the Danish club. And then in current day, I am overseeing our global performance operations. So with Right to Dream, we are working with an academy in Ghana, working with an academy and two pro teams in Egypt. We have an academy and a pro team in Denmark, and now from January, we will have our new MLS club in San Diego with a pro team and an academy there as well. And we have on all of the locations boys and girls academy programs and boys and girl pro teams as well. So it's quite a large organization now. And my job is to oversee the performance part. So everything within medical, physical performance, nutrition, sport and data science, and psychology. And it's not like I'm managing people day to day. It's more from a strategic view now, trying to align what we do. So we are sailing the ship in the same direction across the globe. Not that we have to do anything exactly the same, but trying to make sure that our strategy within performance and those five pillars are looking the same as much as possible.
Amazing. Just before we get into Right to Dream, because I'm keen to get into that into a little bit more detail in a second. In terms of your transition with your career, you spoke about obviously physio and then going into more of these lead roles, into more director roles. How have you found that transition?
Uh, I've found it extremely interesting and extremely exciting, but also very challenging. And I think I even talked to a few mates last weekend around this topic and said like I still miss doing rehab in the gym with the guys every now and then. It's still in there in me to do some of this, but I don't do that anymore. I'm only now an office warrior almost, and I'm traveling around to our locations, and I'm looking more at spreadsheet and strategy documents that I'm looking in the gym. But I absolutely love what I'm doing, and I think it's such an interesting path to take. But it's definitely not for everyone, and you have to be willing to give that up. And like I said, I still miss it, but I don't miss it enough that I want to give up the all the excitement that is within the strategy and the recruitment and building departments. I've just found other ways to win basically, and see other people in these departments develop and take on new responsibilities and challenges has become my winning and my proud moments, more than seeing a player return to play or winning 3 points on the weekend, even though I still enjoy following the teams and seeing those such small victories as well.
I've asked this to a few people that have had similar-ish journeys where they've ended up in either director of performance roles or heading departments from initial technicians in terms of sports science, strength conditioning, physio, what were some of the key skills or attributes that you felt like you needed to develop to get into the position that you're into now? Whether that was obviously before you took the role or being in the role thinking, right, I need this area to develop.
Yeah, I think in football what we often see is that we promote brilliant technicians to then become leaders, and I'm not always fond of that way of thinking, because just because you're a very good sports scientist or physical performance coach or physio or whatever you are, doesn't mean that you're a natural good leader or good at making strategy. But it seems like it's the only career progression we really have. If we want to bump up in positions or bump up in salary, then we take on that road. So for me, it was being very deliberate about what I needed to develop if I had to go on that journey. And I think I've probably always liked the leadership part, both all the way as a kid and growing up, being a captain at a sports team, or being, I don't want to say the alpha in the group in school, but the guy that dictated the football in the courtyards and so on. So I think that part probably felt natural for me always, but I've really had to spend time and energy on leading positively and learning to lead a larger pack. So one thing is to lead 2, 3 people. I'll definitely not say it's easy, but it's easier than having to lead a full performance department. That's the first time I took over the responsibility in FC Nordsjælland. Suddenly I went from a medical department of 5 to a full performance team of 35, including a kitchen operation. It's a whole other ball game to learn to oversee that. And I think a big part of me learning that was learning to say no to stuff and learning to hand stuff on and trust the process, that people will get their things done and I don't need to be there all the time. So learning to trust the process was a big one for me. I'd say I'm not a micromanager by any means, but I like to be involved in the nitty-gritty of the processes. But with this big of a team spreading over 5 very different departments, it was not possible. So it was a huge learning curve for me on that. So I think those were some of the points. And for me, that meant reading up on literature I've never read. So reading up suddenly on leadership styles or communication. And then also for me, it was having a few mentors on the sideline, both within the club. I'm very lucky to take over from a guy that gave me the possibility to promote through the ranks and being able to spar with him, but also having a mentor externally to just bounce ideas off of when I got up for something. Because I was definitely this guy promoted because I was a decent fisher doing well, and not because I was necessarily the best leader that was in the organization. So for me, it was trying to do that as deliberate as possible.
I find that point really interesting that you mentioned about being able to trust to then have people in roles that you were potentially in before. Because I think speaking to, again, people that have ended up in similar roles, I think that's one thing that they potentially say is that they obviously want to progress, they want to move up in their careers, but at the same time, whether it's a rehab program, whether it's an S&C program, a way of maybe utilizing data in terms of sports science, they're probably always looking back on it thinking, well, I could do it that way, or
Yeah. I completely agree. And I think I was lucky that we've established a program within our organization where internal promotion and succession plan is a huge part of what we do. And fortunately, I'm carrying heavily forward now myself. So I knew that if I promoted, we would have a new guy or girl that was ready to take that step and take over, which gave me I didn't need to go on the market to find a new head of medical. We were very lucky when I transitioned out of that we had a very good guy in Ghana that we could promote up to Denmark, that could become the head of medical, and then we could fill these spots. So we're very good at moving people around, and that creates it creates a relaxed vibe for those who promote, that they know they can hand the ranks on to someone that's already within the system. Of course, every now and then we need someone from outside, but for a majority of what we can do, we can hire internally, which is a very, very nice thing and makes it slightly easier to hand on the ranks. Not easy, but slightly easier.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense, 100%. You've touched a little bit on Right to Dream, the sort of clubs that are involved, and also there about the the career of a potential staff member as well and these opportunities. Can you pad that out a little bit for the listeners in terms of the background of Right to Dream, how it's developed and what it looks like?
Yeah, I can try. Right to Dream is started by a guy called Tom Vernon, a former Man United scout working out of Africa, and then basically started their football academy out of his own house, and it's a beautiful story that I cannot tell in any near detail that Tom will be able to, and I'm sure you can find 100 podcasts out there of him talking about that. But basically building an academy from scratch in Ghana, giving kids the opportunity to shine through football and have another life. Grew that massively over the first years, and actually ended up being an academy purchasing a club in Denmark, and not the normal story where a pro club will purchase an academy. Actually, here the academy and the investors behind it ended up purchasing FCN in Denmark, so FC Nordsjælland, to create a pathway for these football talents to have a stepping stone into Europe, but also having a stepping stone before they needed to reach top 5 leagues or any other places where they would be quote unquote bored and forgotten, because they will compete with a lot of other very good talents. So a smaller stepping stone in the Danish league to be able to progress the talent out and make pathways was what happened, and we did that now probably 9 years ago now. And then we've seen some of the fruits with, Kamal Dean Sulemana in Southampton. You have Kudus in West Ham. You have Simon Adingra in Brighton. There's a few of these Premier League kids at the moment that's coming from this academy in Ghana, had transitioned to Denmark and then out. And then in 2021, Egyptian family, the Mansours, bought the whole organization, and have now established an academy outside Cairo in Egypt, built an absolutely fantastic facility down there, and has a women's first team that just won the league and the cup and is playing African Champions League on the women's side. There's a men's team progressing through the ranks of Egyptian football, and then a full academy that we are building. And now with the funding from the Mansour family, and together with the Supuan tribe in San Diego, we've acquired the MLS franchise, 30th MLS franchise over there, and spent the last 1.5, 2 years now mapping out this journey, designing a new training facility, all of this. And then over the last 8 months now, my job has been to help the recruitment of the performance department, which we are finalizing just these days. And then we will have a new team and players and everything on the ground from January 25 and ready to participate in the new season of MLS. And then we have the Danish team FCN, who's been there all along, known for top talent development, and a lot of kids going out from us to bigger addresses in Europe. Constantly a top 6, top 4 team in the Danish league, played Conference League last season, and so on. So succeeding also on the pro football side. So it's a big organization now with a lot of players really focused generally on talent development and talent pathways. So where we really differ ourselves from a lot of the other, I don't want to say multi-club, but multi-community organizations at least, is that we really value the school side and the human side as well. So if our talents, when we get them in Ghana or Egypt, when they get in at 10 years old, and at 12, we know they will probably not get on a pro football pathway. We're not sacking them. We're helping them. We have good schools on all our locations, and some of our kids ends up on scholarships in the US. We just had a kid graduating from Stanford and so on. So the whole thing about making a development and making a pathway for these kids is more than just football. Which I think is such a beautiful thing to be a part of. So I think that's a very quick, very broad overview of the organization.
No, that's brilliant though. It gives a really good insight into the organization. You mentioned there about the player pathway. You also touched before about the sort of staff pathway as well. Can you give a bit of detail on that, in terms of, you've obviously said about trying to appoint within and progress people within the organization?
Yeah. So starting on the players side, until recently when we acquired the MLS franchise. Well, the Egyptian and Ghana and Danish academies are producing players to come play for the first team in Denmark. It's not like kids are forced to choose that when they turn 18 like anyone else. They have a free choice to sign with clubs. But of course, we've shown that we can progress with the Danish team. We play very young. We had one of the youngest teams in Europe over the last few years, and in the pro leagues, we're selling players off for very, very significant fees and to very significant football addresses around the world now, and are known for this talent development. So a lot of the whole notion was to create pathways for these talent through the pro pathway. And now with San Diego coming along, it's one of the reasons wasn't it sounds like we're the best, but like we produce too many talents to give them options. So to keep building on this narrative, now we will have two first teams, and it's not going to be one that's higher than the other. It's also going to be on the player side to help choose where they want to go and how they see their career progression. But now we'll be able to offer two places now where we will have a first team that'll compete in top flight competition, and hopefully create even more dreams come true for kids around the world, having a pro football pathway. And for me, then within the performance space on the staffing side, one of my biggest tasks going forward, it will be how can we find ways to do the same for our staff. So like I said earlier, we're very big on succession planning and individual development also for the staff, and thereby also giving opportunities to progress within the organization, whether it be on the location you are, transitioning from being a junior physio to become a head of medical or whatever it could be. We also want to see those exchanges around the world. So like I said, we took the head of medical in Ghana and made him head of medical for a Danish pro team. And that's one that has succeeded now with it, and hopefully we'll see more of these links going forward. And how we do it is also making sure that the staff visits each other. So we will take some of the Ghana staff and fly them to Denmark for a week and just be around the teams, or we will fly someone down to Ghana or to Egypt. And now with US coming along, they will of course get in this mix. So we make sure that we keep integrating with each other, and it's also our way to make sure that our strategy, global strategy, is enforced, that we come and inspire each other. Because I think it's very important that we don't only have the narrative that our African delegation should come to Denmark to learn or come to US to learn. It's even more so the reverse way, that we should come down there and learn. Like that's Ghana is the place that's developed some of the biggest talents this organization has produced. So we should really be open-minded here and make sure that we have an interchangeable learning experience where we can learn from both ways. So a lot of interaction between the clubs and the academies, and something simple. We drive a worldwide WhatsApp group where we put all our performance staff in. Now when San Diego is fully running, we are operating with 60, maybe even 70 performance professionals globally. So there's always someone to reach out to, no matter if you're in the psych area or you're in the nutrition area or in the physical performance area. There's always someone to just post a question to. How would you do in this situation? Or this podcast was very interesting, or this article you should read. Like, so we can get that community feeling within the club, and then grow all our staff from that. That's the big goal.
Exciting, very exciting for players, but like obviously with talking to the audience of this podcast, very exciting for staff as well, isn't it, in terms of the opportunities that are out there? And I'm guessing that comes with even more growth over the years to come as well, in terms of are they looking at more clubs getting involved?
Yeah, I'm not at the level where I'm taking those decisions, luckily, but I would be very surprised if we are not looking to expand over the next few years. I think we're in a consolidation phase right now. Egypt launched last year. We're launching MLS now. I would guess that we're in a stabilization phase, but give it a few more years, and I'm confident that we will see Right to Dream expanding once again, and getting more people involved, and finding new ways to make sure that there's pathways for kids another place in the world.
What I'm keen to dive into is your role within this organization. So you've mentioned about obviously a new club essentially joining the organization, which comes with hiring of staff, obviously a creation of like culture within that club as well. So what's your approach to that when you've got your blank your blank piece of paper, and then what's the first sort of steps that you take?
Yeah. It's I would say it's a first off for me also with San Diego coming in, because there's literally nothing. Like there's no existing club, there's no existing employees, there's nothing. It's really a blank canvas, and I think that's such a cool and such a probably once in career experience to get something like that. So we spend a lot of time on it and mapping out what we want to do. So basically my role within that has been sitting on the committee to design the performance building. So everything from locker rooms to the gym to the medical facilities, what kind of equipment would go in and so on. That has been a very long process, and luckily the building is being built as we speak and has to be done within the next 2 months here. So really, really excited to get back over there soon and see how it finishes up. So that has been one part of the process that I've never done before, which was very interesting. And then mapping out what kind of team would we need from a performance perspective. MLS has its own rules on mandated staff and so on that we're not used to here in Europe. So there's been a lot of learning curve on rules and regulations within MLS, which has also been very interesting. And then getting into the nitty gritty of then designing a performance department, trying to make sure that we do it aligned to the philosophy and strategy that we have globally. So working with the 5 pillars I mentioned earlier, how would we then look at building those teams? So I also said that I don't like this, that leaders are being promoted not because they're good leaders, but because of skills. Then we have now had the chance to make sure that we actually hired very good leaders for the 3 leadership positions. Maybe also, we've been lucky to find both good leaders and good practitioners, but the whole main thing for us was to find good leaders and then maybe care a little less about the actual delivery skills, and then make sure that if we've got someone with the good leadership capabilities, then how would we design his or her department underneath? So we made sure that we will get the gym rat, the fitness coach type thing, the sports science geek, but also how would those 3 interlink together within that? So we made sure that they could build a culture together and have a good rapport. There has been so many drawings and so many discussions. So I think all in all for San Diego, we've had more than 1,500 job applications to read through, and we've done more than 150, maybe even close to 200 hours of interviewing different people for these positions. So we've done everything we can, and everything has been led with a human-centered, human-first approach, whatever you want to call it, where for us it's so much more important who it is we hire than what their skill capabilities are. So on the leadership level, being very good leaders, all of our casework for these kinds of interviews has been around leadership and not about applied skills. For the positions lower than that, there of course there's been some applied skills, but we usually have said that your resume and your reputation gets you the interview, but what gets you the job is who you are as a person. And we've put all of our focus in creating, it's a team of 12, 1 director and then 11 underneath, and it's been finding a way where we can feel confident that putting this team together that's never met before, there's no culture. When we put them in a room on probably December 1st is what we aim for, having everyone there, is people will walk in and it will be an instant feeling of a nice atmosphere. People can relate, people can interact. And that's been me, and then Luke Jenkinson, who we hired as the performance director. It's been our role throughout this recruitment process to try to envision this. And I'm so excited to see this coming through. And if we hit it the right way, I fingers crossed we did. But it's been such an amazing experience to be a part of building this from scratch. But I would say that the biggest underlining factor is really having a focus on who we were talking to and the person behind that, and very little on the actual skills, because we believe that with the wider philosophy we have within Right to Dream, with the performance standards we were driven and how we do things already, we have internal education pipelines and so on. We can teach, whether you're a physical performance coach or a physio or an athletic trainer in the US, we can teach you whatever needs to be taught to do your role, but it's very difficult to teach you to be a quote unquote nicer human being. It's easier to teach you to become a better physio on a technical skill thing. So that has been our approach to the whole hiring. And that goes also for the rest of the globe when we hire. Luckily, we're not hiring 12 positions at the same time anytime again soon, because it's also been a lot. But at the moment, we're recruiting for a physio for our international academy. And it's the same approach for me. It's finding the right human fit for the organization that believes in the values, that believes in the mission, can see themselves in that. And then we can always touch on the physio skills, but they're almost less important from the get-go because I believe that we can upskill them within the ecosystem we have.
That's really, really interesting. I think a lot of people benefit from hearing that, because I completely agree from speaking to a lot of people that the CV, like you say, gets a door slightly open, doesn't it? But then the rest has to fully give you that opportunity. If you were to pick maybe a couple of attributes, maybe personality traits that once people are in the room with you, you're like, okay, that's a tick. Or
yep.
On the other side of things, is there a couple of things where people might mention or what they've done previously where it's like, that might also work the opposite?
Yeah, I think a big one is communication. Very big one. Like how do they approach the interview? How do they sit through it, and how do they keep eye contact, keep listening, maybe listen more than you talk on a interview is difficult, but I always appreciate when people can do that. Like we would have people in there that spoke so much that we almost couldn't get a word in and ask the questions we want. And I know a lot of it comes from being nervous and so on, but like having people that can relax in a job interview situation, because they're going to go into a high pressure, high stress environment working within football, traveling around the world and living with the pressure of coaches and so on. So being able to be relaxed in that situation, communicate effectively, and I want to say have that cheeky smile or that small wink in the eye, whatever we call it, is something you pick up immediately when you do a lot of these interviews. And I think that's one of them. And then just being vulnerable and being able to accept, I don't know it all. Like if I ask you a question and you generally don't know the answer, please just tell me, I don't know, but I would look it up and I'm happy to come back to you, or give me an explanation to why. That would put you so much in front of the queue in my book than trying to come up with an answer where everyone can hear it's, I almost want to say half-assed. Like it's just be real. That is my generally best advice, I think, for these interview processes. And it goes the same for anything else there. Like be real, be realistic. Don't be hit by Dunning-Kruger effect and think you know it all, because you don't. So just be very, very mindful about what you don't know and dare to explain that. That's a huge thing. And I think on the reverse scale, people that comes across like a know-it-all, like I've been in these 5 clubs before, therefore I should almost automatically have this job, is an instant no-go for me. But I really think like being genuine, being real, quote unquote real, and being honest, and then being an effective communicator is very high on our list when we approach people.
That's a great insight. You talked before about the team of 12, obviously with the director and then the 11 staff members. We did a podcast recently with the performance team at Portsmouth. And we spoke about that. We spoke about sort of staff size, because obviously finances come into play with whichever club it is, logistics sometimes as well. But knowing how many staff is sort of the sweet spot can be quite tough, can't it? You might have a smaller staff that are very well operated, but a bigger staff that maybe not, and obviously vice versa as well. So what made you sort of land on 11 with the director, or 12?
Yeah, I think a big part of it was in MLS was the mandated roles. So I think, without me being absolutely sure, and I think 7 of the roles are mandated by the league. You have to have them no matter what. And then to create the structure we wanted to align it required us to get a few other roles. So there is no mandated nutritionist. There is no mandated psychologist. There's no mandated performance director. So those were three roles we immediately added to the seven, made us go to 10. And I think we added on, I can't remember, a sports scientist maybe. There's a few other roles, and we went from two to three ATs and so on. So there was a few roles we added to make sure that we had global alignment. But I think the sweet spot for me is I've never worked in the Premier League, so I can't speak for it. But sometimes when you see the staffing sizes, even in just the medical departments, I'm intrigued to know what people are doing on a daily basis that creates value for the team and the club. Because if you have 8 physios for one team, I would doubt that you work in the most efficient way. So I think a sweet spot for me, for us, is somewhere between 7 to 12, 8 to 12, somewhere along those, and that can then incorporate a few physios, a few performance coaches, psychologists, nutritionists, a few data guys, and so on. And then you have a very good foundation to build from. And I think a lot of teams, I know that when you play 3 games a week, your demands will increase also to make sure that you don't burn out your staff. So now I'm speaking from a academy development perspective and from a first team that plays in 1 or 2 competitions. I think you can get a long way with these around 10 plus minus a few looking at a holistic performance department.
Brilliant. And in terms of your role, so once I know we're talking ahead of time a little bit now as well, but once you've got the staff in terms of the people in those roles at San Diego, where does your focus go then from your perspective? I mean, from your role with that team?
Yeah, so well, hopefully my focus will be a little more equally split than on the global department. And right now, it's been heavily focused on the San Diego because of this whole recruitment process. So when it's all clicking, we get January 1st. Hopefully, I can step a little back. The whole purpose is that Luke has to have his team over there. He's not reporting to me. I'm not overseeing his shoulder. I maybe will be over there in the start just to be almost his wingman and help him integrate the performance philosophy. We created a best practice document within the organization across these 5 pillars. And it's not a Bible handed out to Luke and the team say you have to do this, but it's a document that provides the guardrails from what we want to see and do within the performance space in these 5 sub-pillars. A bit like the football coaches, we have a style of play or methodology document. We created that within the performance department. And my job is to help Luke put that into practice, but not me on a daily basis. That's Luke to be there. I'll visit, let's say 2 to 3 times per year, be over there, be on the ground, but otherwise I'll be the guy to call on the phone or have a meeting with and be the sounding board almost and someone to bounce ideas off to. I think I sit in a group where we oversee the global part. So there's a group technical director, group head of football, recruitment, pathways, and then me. And we almost work as I don't want to say SWAT team, but we can go to the individual locations and help on the ground if needed. But otherwise, we're an advisory board to help navigate within this global structure and how we see both performance and football and recruitment and so on as a joint thing. So we probably an advisory board is the easiest way to explain it. So that's going to be my role in US. That's my role on all the other locations. And then I aim to travel. I am based in Denmark, work out of a club in Denmark, so I'm there every day. And then I'm aiming to visit the other facilities at least 2 to 3 times per year each. And so fairly frequently down there. I'm actually going to Ghana next week to visit our academy down there. I just were in Egypt a few weeks ago. So fairly frequently on the ground to integrate with the staff. And when I'm there, it's not to come teach. It's not to come. It could be to do a workshop, but it's not to come and oversee. It's come to be there, talk development, talk opportunities, see how I can help. So my biggest thing is when I'm there, it's like, tell me how I can best help. Is it helping you to discuss with the CEO why you need improved budget to buy some new gym equipment? Or is it a rehab case we need to look at together? Or is it negotiating a better deal with the GPS supplier, right? Or whatever it can be, I'm there to help, and it can be in all facets of what lies within performance.
I'm guessing quite a lot of jobs and sort of problems and challenges that come up that you weren't quite expecting back when you were physio full time as well?
Oh yeah, 100%. It's been some interesting years with a lot of problem solving. I've never thought that I should interact with. At the moment, for example, negotiating a global deal on a GPS supplier is a fun little side project to make sure that we align our data collection globally. And how does that work when you work out of two places in Africa? You work out of US and then in Scandinavia, and how do you construct that? And so yeah, there's many problem solving things, and then also just day-to-day staff issues and people work together or not work together, or issues with the CEO or issue with the head coach or whatever. It's there's multifaceted, I think, is the best way to approach it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm interested as well in terms of the differences when we're talking sports science now, in terms of the differences of provision of sports science across the different countries, continents, even now as well. Because I understand that obviously you'll have your process, you'll have the sort of systems that you'll implement at different clubs, but there's still going to be differences, isn't there, across countries?
100%. 100%. And there's also, so even though we built from the same framework, we don't have the same team all over the world. So Egypt is different from Ghana, Ghana is different from Denmark, Denmark is different from San Diego, but the overall philosophy is the same. So within sports science is a good area to talk within, because we don't have a dedicated sports scientist, for example, in Ghana. It relies within a shared responsibility between physios and physical coaches to do, let's say, GPS analysis. So what we did from a group or global perspective has been, we built with our data engineer team and sports science team in Denmark, we built a full backend, almost our own AMS. So all of our data, also from Egypt and from Ghana and from US and Dominican, flow to the same system, same database. And then we can we API in all the data, and then we have a database to analyze and Power BI everything out. So the sports science part is easier when you're in Ghana and you're not a trained sports scientist, and you just need almost to know how to dock in the GPSs, and our backend system can now spit out the GPS reports for you. So we're trying to ease the life of the practitioners around the world by centralizing how we collect data. It could be GPSs, could also be strength measures on hamstrings, squeezes, and so on. Everything, we have the same devices all over the world. And because we're, like you said earlier, like finances is a thing, so we couldn't afford to have fancy testing equipment from the big suppliers. So instead, we went the innovative road. We partnered with an engineering company, and we have developed our own force platforms, own squeeze devices, own hamstring devices, and so on, and validated against known brands, and had a very, very decent study on that. And now we are able to have the exact same testing set up worldwide, meaning that we have a ton of data points coming into our database from squeeze, hamstring, quad, force profiling on jumps, and so on. And we can then, on the back end, analyze all that data and help the Egypt, Ghana, US coming up if they don't have the sports science provision at the moment.
It's amazing to hear. Yeah, it's been very exciting to watch the progress as well with that, obviously with San Diego as well, and the team that Luke's going to be working with over there. So no, I really appreciate you covering that. One thing I didn't ask before when we were talking about filling these positions is we talked about the sort of the soft skills, but would you have any other advice for coaches that are looking to stand out in the industry, just not necessarily to get into a position with Right to Dream or one of your organizations, but just in general, what are you seeing in terms of practitioners standing out?
Yeah, I think a big one for us and for me, and probably even more for myself, is make sure you know the literature, stay evidence-based. Don't be fooled into all of these weird courses you can take and so on. I'm here maybe a bit more talking to the medical guys than the performance guys, but like, stay coherent to the literature, know your literature, engage, ask questions. Social media plays a big part in everything today. And I'm not talking about you have to put yourself out there, but use Twitter or X or whatever we call it today, or LinkedIn. to ask questions around research papers, so on. Make sure you get it. If you don't have access to buy or download research papers, 9 out of 10 researchers will happily share their papers with you if you approach them. So say for me, it's always been one, and what I said to our interns all the time is like, stay updated, make sure you know the literature, learn how to read a research paper, learn how to engage with that part of the community. I think is very, very vital. And then always practice your communication. Communication is a key skill, whether it's relationship with players, relationship with managers, relationship with your boss, your line manager, or you wanting to promote. Being good at communication is always a plus. And then the boring advice is work hard. It's a grinding industry. You need to put in your hours. I'm not saying I'm a fan of the whole intern progress, and definitely not a fan of the non-paid work and so on, but there is still parts of this industry that lives by some of these norms, and it is a way to get in. I did it. I don't like it. I'm doing what I can to fight it within our organization, make sure there's actually pay for people. Not always a great amount of money, but at least money. But it is a industry like many others where you need to work your ass off for some years to get the right opportunities. So get in, get your hands dirty, do the work. If you can't connect with a pro club, like if you're in a smaller country like Denmark, go work, get your hours in the local sporting club. They would love if you come volunteer just for 2 hours a week, oversee a game. Don't only focus on football. Go watch the rugby team or the badminton tournament or whatever there's possibility to do. Get your hands dirty and get your experience. It will pay you back dividends later on.
It's a really interesting point you bring up around the paid and unpaid work, because obviously to have paid work out there from people taking first positions would be great. But at the same time, I know you said you've done it. I've definitely done it over the years working unpaid. Do you feel like that maybe tests the water for people a little bit in terms of we said about working hard?
Yeah, for sure it does. But I also think it creates an exploration culture that I really don't like. And I think there's some very good guys and girls out there at the moment that's shouting as high as they can and trying to change this. But I think the whole problem is there were just too many physios and sports scientists and performance coaches out there to the amount of jobs. The narrative from clubs often becomes there's always someone that's willing to take your job for less pay than you are at the moment, and we keep tripping ourselves by someone taking up these positions. So I don't have the solution to how we get out of it, but I can say from within, it's some of my points is to try. I think it will always exist, but we need to make sure that at least at an entry level where we start seeing them coming in more than part-time, that we pay people. I'm not saying that we should pay them tons of money. I would love to do that, but that's not realistic. But we need to pay a livable wage and then progress people from there. But it's not going to change anytime soon. And I think we see the trend. But I also hate seeing clubs advertising a full-time position, and then you see that they're looking for free labor, but at the same time they're paying millions to a star striker. Like, we need to find a balance. Either you want it or you don't want it.
No, I agree. And I think the other thing to layer onto that is what you've covered so in depth already, is the fact that this sort of interview process that you go through within the organization, it's testing. That is the whole initial test, isn't it, of getting the right people in the right positions in terms of
100%.
characteristics and everything already. So adding that onto that makes complete sense.
100%. I did like character is everything here. I think that's the bottom line thing.
Yeah, brilliant. Kasper, I just wanted to wrap things up, just getting your opinion just on the industry really as a whole. We've spoke about directors of performance. We've talked about sort of group directors, sports science, physio. We see these roles sort of transitioning. Where do you see performance support being in maybe 5-10 years time? Do you feel like there'd be more organizations like yours where there'll be maybe staff within an organization with a number of clubs? How do you see it looking in clubs?
That's a very, very good question. I think at least the trend that we've seen over the last 10, 20 years has been amazing to follow, both within our own organization, but also just on a global scale, and see how many coaches and how many organizations now really, really value and understand what a performance department can contribute to the team and how important it can be for a team's success rate. I hope that we don't see a massive development in staff size in the big leagues, because I think we're almost overstaffed. I hope we will see clubs being willing to spend more money on their academy programs, getting better provision at the academies, also in the little lower leagues, and learning to see that it's difficult to see an immediate financial gain by investing in the performance department next year at the U10 to 15 age group. But in 5 years' time, when we invest now, we'll have faster, better, more resilient players because they can go through a better physical development program. I think that's where we will see things change, hopefully change, I would say, over the next few years. And I even provocatively yesterday had a discussion: should we flip the pay structure? People will always want to work in our first teams, right? So should we pay the first team performance staff less and pay our U10 to 15 physio and performance coach on better than the first team, because it's here we need to develop the kids if we want to have talents coming through our academy and ultimately making it into the first team? Should that be a model that we look into? And I know it will never happen like that, but I think the narrative about us looking at the moment, it's almost like we find the cheapest guys and girls for the lower academy, and then you almost can get a pay rise every time you bounce up a year group. Yeah. But if we really want to make a good foundation for these boys and girls in the academies, why are we not hiring industry experts to deal with those age brackets? We don't do it because we don't have the money, basically, right? I think everyone can agree it would be a good idea to have a very, very good movement coach or whatever, motor skill development coach, whatever it could be at a younger age group, but we don't invest the money. So what if we flip the model and actually pour it in a lot more money down below and then build it up? I think it would be an interesting experiment, at least.
I love that you brought that up, because Jordan, who is normally on the podcast as my co-host, we speak about this all the time. And we talk about having like world-class developers and the fact that we should be rewarding world-class developers. And we speak about some people as more suited to the development side. Some people are more suited 100%. To the performance side. But at the same time, like you say, we need to try and encourage the world-class developing coaches to remain in that environment and develop the players, don't we?
100%. And I think that's the tough nut. And it goes back again to the leadership discussion about being promoted to being a leader just because it pays more. It's the same here, right? You're being promoted from the U15 team, even though you're the best U15 practitioner, because if you want to earn more money, you need to be at the U19 level, or you need to be assistant at the first team and whatever. So how can we get a culture where we promote and honor skills and skills development with also a paycheck, even though it doesn't mean you promote through it? And we have a brilliant girl at our Danish academy, works with the women's girls academy. And she said very openly, I have no aspirations to go to the first team. It's not what I want to do. I love being in this development thing where the girls are 13 to 16 years old, and I feel like I can work with them. This is what I want. I became a physio because I wanted to work in pediatrics. This is a perfect spot for me. It's like, that was so refreshing to hear someone that didn't have, and it's not because of the lack of aspirations, because you can easily aspire to be the best you can possibly be within that without having to aspire to become something that's close to the first team. And I think at least for it seems like at our place, we have a few female employees that's very good at viewing things like that. So there's definitely also some of them that really wants to go to the first team, but on the men's side, it seems more like this struggle of it's about the promotion, it's about getting to that first team and having the quote unquote prestige that follows that. So I think it's such an interesting debate, and there's nothing wrong in either camp. Both is completely good and can progress into two very, very good career paths. But I think it would be interesting for us to find a way where we give a round of applause to people that really want to stay within the development side and just be really, really good there, and then pay them accordingly to stay there.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. And hopefully that is the case, and the pattern that we will see over the next few years as well. But Kasper, that has been Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It's great to dive into the organization. Really exciting times, I know, for you and the organization. I wish you all the best with San Diego, and to Luke and the team as well. If people want to follow what you've got going on, what the organization's got going on, where would you direct them?
Yeah, I think for the organization, I think Right to Dream and FCN and San Diego FC is on all fancy social media channels you can find under those names. And if you want to see what Boring Me is doing, then I think LinkedIn at the moment is probably best, just under Kasper Thornton. And what you would likely see most is me just posting a ton of job applications that you can apply, and then you might be so unlucky to get me on a call and go through the process that we talked about here today. I'm not good at posting much else on it, but you're more than welcome to reach out. I'm always happy to discuss all things within performance or hiring. So anyone that wants to have a chat is welcome. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn.
Brilliant. Kasper, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.